diagram on product management is like Mona Lisa on every product management slide deck, on every other talk that we see. I was wondering, have you ever considered adding a fourth circle? If yes, what that fourth circle would be?
I don't know if it's a Mona Lisa. It might be much more like the early Leonardo da Vinci sketches or something like that. But it had an unintended impact, I think, for sure.
This year, there's been this lot of talk about a new type of a role called the AI product manager. However, the AI product manager might not come, or do we need to be like B2B product managers or B2C product managers, or will there be an AI product managers? Or do you see that the role of product manager fundamentally change from the time you wrote the book?
I think it's definitely a continuation of that evolution, right? So I agree with you. I'm not 100% convinced we need a specialization AI product manager. But then I would also argue you don't need a specialization of B2B or B2C product manager. It's the same job, right? We're still solving customer problems. The complexity and the different stakeholders change based on the market. But I think, as we were talking about just now around the evolution that I've seen, right, from PRDs and kind of very waterfall process into much more agile and Scrum into, the iterative product operating model that we're in today, I think AI is just a natural continuation of that. Don't get me wrong, I think AI is massively impactful. Like, I think it's as big or bigger as the mobile or the web. Like, it is a massive step change in both what we build and how we build. And it's going to impact every product person out there. And
how does one become a product manager? What are the skills to get a job? Probably in Level Labs or those, cutting edge companies like that.
Yeah, my sense is, looking at some of the people who have joined those companies recently and founded those companies, it's really generalists, right? I think that's a big, talking about skills actually for the future. I think it's embracing that product management mindset of a generalist mindset of not just, how do we look at our team and lots of different skill sets, but I think what makes great product people in general and looking at these organizations specifically is people who are, yes, they understand product, but they also understand design. They also understand technology. They've been playing around with these Gen AI tools since the day they came out. They are very much involved in all of it, and therefore can do more as individuals than maybe even a whole team can. And so I think that's one of those like level up things as well that you see. And when you're building a team or thinking about a team, like thinking about not just the old culture fit that we used to talk about, but as my friends say, always reminds me to talk about culture add, right? What can I add to this culture that would actually bring a new perspective or a new insight to bear on what we're trying to work on? And whether that's a different educational background, a different socioeconomic background, just different experience, again, B2C, B2B, different industries, how can we bring something more academic or research-based to it? All of these different things, I think, as we build out teams, really enrich how we build products. So I think it's just something to embrace rather than challenge.
Hi all, welcome to the Priceless Conversations, the podcast where we navigate the art and science of product management, automation, AI, and pricing. We do this with a mix of wit, wisdom, and an occasional dashboard war-related story. Hi all, I'm Satya, a scientist who found her way into product management and the world of AI and automation. And yes, I still use a lot of research, data, and connect a whole lot of dots across domains to solve problems.
And I work on product and pricing and spend most of my time helping teams figure out what it is worth building and how to price it. Sometimes that means fixing messy dashboards, sometimes asking uncomfortable questions. Either way, I'm here to keep it real. Today's guest needs a little introduction if you've ever looked up anything about product management. He's one of the most influential voices in the field. He founded ProductTank, co-founded Mind the Product, both of which have become foundations of the global product community. His work has shaped how thousands of product professionals think, lead, and grow, including many of us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Martin Eriksson.
Yay!
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here.
So,
Thank you,
Martin, I'll start with a question on a very famous diagram. So your Venn diagram on product management is like Mona Lisa on every product management slide deck, on every other talk that we see. And I've also included on my LinkedIn banner, the three circles. And um, I was wondering, have you ever considered adding a fourth circle? If yes, what that fourth circle would be?
I don't know if it's a Mona Lisa. It might be much more like the early Leonardo da Vinci sketches or something like that. But it had an unintended impact, I think, for sure. It was just, I'm very much a visual thinker, so it's just a way for me to kind of start thinking about what we do as product people and as product teams, I think, most importantly. I have thought about the multiple circles. I think the problem is I can't stop with one more circle. I kind of at one point drew one that just, ended up being like one of those like squircle things. And basically, you can add so many things into this. You can add data, analytics, you can add, user research, you can add marketing, you can add, lots and lots of other skills and talents that are needed in a fully rounded product team. So I think the challenge is, where do you stop? And which is why I think when we come back to it, it tends to be those three that are the core, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Those three circles were part of the ProductTank and Mind the Product and MTPCon as well. In fact, I have one of those circle stickies on my laptop. So yes, they've shaped our thinking. Well, in fact, just going back to that ProductTank and Mind the Product, what was it that kind of led you to feel that let's start Mind the Product? How did you envision its impact on the product community now?
Well, as you said, it started with ProductTank, right? It started with just a simple meetup. I was a VP product at a startup at the time, so I'd gone from kind of a bigger company, a bigger organization where there were lots of product people and lots of people to have discussions with and conversations with and kind of learn from, to being basically the only product person in the company. The designers were picking on me, the engineers were making fun of me, so I was like, who are my people? Who do I go talk to? And over time, I did build a team in that company, but the first answer was, well, how do I go meet some people? And I was surprised to find that there wasn't really anything, right? There were no meetups, there were no communities, there were no kind of associates, nothing really in the UK at the time. And so I just got my boss to put a few £100 behind the bar to pay for some beers, found the space behind an old pub or a pub/bar in London. I think we were about 24, 25 people the first event. I had two friends basically that I knew come and be the first speakers and kind of share their stories. And then we had some beers, we had great conversations. And it was pretty immediately obvious that I was not the only one that had this kind of sense of loneliness in product. And it just took on a life of its own. So very quickly met Jana and Simon, who were starting Product Camp in London at the time. And we decided to kind of join forces. And so we kind of ran it together, and I think we ran 2 or 3 more meetups. We ran a Product Camp in London. And then that's when we decided that, we needed something that kind of connects the dots for these, right? And continues the conversation when we're not in person, face to face. And so we just wanted to think about, how do we start a blog, and how do we start something that's a bit more online and lives between these events? And that's when we started Mind the Products. The name obviously came from a joke, a kind of London joke about Mind the Gap, which you hear all the time on the tube here in London. And it became very localized, which is also just showing the intent. That was all we wanted it to be, a London event and a London community. We had never thought that it would get as big as it would. And I think the success of it is because it was that genuine and authentic, right? It was just 3 product people, and soon we added, more people to the team. We had James come and join to help us on the commercial side. When we were on our first conference, we had Annalisa come and join to actually run the thing. But very quickly, that authenticity, I think, meant that it was just very genuine. And it's just product people learning from each other. And that's why I still, ran it for 12 years, but still love being part of that community, is to learn from everyone else, right?
It truly has been part of our journey as well. Starting ProductTank here in Pune, and then attending MTPCon. The kind of show and the huge conference, it's a huge learning opportunity for all of us. And yes, built a community.
Well, thank you for all the hard work you're doing for the community. I think that's the most amazing thing, right? Is meeting everyone who's out there building on the community and building it locally. Because we helped set some frameworks in place and hopefully gave you some tools, but the success of the Indian community is down to organizers and coordinators like you. So thank you.
And then we had the World Product Day every year.
Yes.
I think it's becoming bigger and bigger each year. This year we had 90 meetups. Just
And
World
I
Product.
think, Satya, you had the largest meetup in Hyderabad.
Yes. Actually, in Hyderabad, this was one of the first ones, and in the main innovation hub of the state. So basically, it's called T Hub. So it was quite an impact.
Yeah, and I think that was. I think the credit for World Product Day goes to Jana Basto, who kind of came up with the idea that we should figure out something to celebrate and make up this day, basically. And it was something the whole team then got behind. And I think it was just a way for us to figure out how do we connect all of these ProductTank meetups, because again, they're very local, and that's what makes them successful. But then how do we make sure that we try to connect them as much as possible with each other? And World Product Day was just a great excuse to start connecting the communities. And it wasn't just about product tanks, right? I think there are other meetups and other people who get involved and want to do things on that day in other local communities. But this was a way to connect the dots again and connect everyone with each other across all these time zones and distances that we have, and kind of just share what we're doing with our craft. And I think we saw that even more this year, right? With some of the online events that we're really trying to connect it. And I think one of the first ones we did, we actually tried to have a 24 hours of ProductTank. So there was like a meetup happening somewhere in the world every hour for like 24 hours. So we were just trying to figure out ways to connect those communities and bring people together internationally as well as locally.
So Martin, like in today's world, product management is kind of understood, or more largely understood, as product management in tech, in automation or in AI and all. However, when you started at Financial Times, it was a more traditional product management, isn't it? Like, what were the key takeaways about the product development and management in the traditional media environment?
Yeah, and actually even before that, because my first product job was at Monster, the job board, in 1999, showing my age there. But that's really where I learned what product was and how powerful and amazing it can be. Wisdom, but also showing, learning a lot of the lessons of how not to do it, I think. So back then we were definitely, writing massive product requirement documents. We would spend like 6 months writing, everything about this one feature that you might want to think about, and then talking to mainly stakeholders, not customers and users, and kind of, throwing it over the wall to engineering, and 6 months later, something completely different would come out. And so just kind of going through that journey of seeing how not to do it, but also how powerful product can be, even in the wrong environment. And then, as you said, in the media environment and the FT, kind of thinking about how do we be a bit more agile about these things? How do we be more iterative? And again, just learning from different people, what's working, what's not working. And even then, actually, we had started being much more focused around agile. So it was more focused on Scrum and kind of how do we do delivery better? How do we be a bit more iterative, at least, ship every couple of weeks instead of every 6 months or something like that. And then obviously the journey's just continued, right? We're getting faster and faster on the delivery side. I'm glad to see that over the last probably 10, 15 years has been much, much more focused on the discovery side, right? So making sure that we're not just good at shipping, but we're also making sure we're shipping the right thing in the first place. And then now I think we're coming to a point where those are coming together, and really it's still that question of are we shipping the right thing, and a much bigger focus on commercial impact if you're a for-profit company, but also just impact if you're a nonprofit or government organization, and really on strategy, which is, I guess, what I'm obsessed about these days, of, again, just making some of those tough choices as an organization, not just in products, about what we want to do and who we're doing it for.
So Martin, like you said about strategies, and over the last couple of years, you have been talking about decision stack. Can you please elaborate on your decision stack model, and how is it making effective product decisions?
Yeah, so this started as a talk actually at Product at Heart in Hamburg for the leadership group in 2019, I think. And it came off the fact that for the last kind of couple of years there, I've been part-time as an advisor to a VC firm called EQT Ventures, one of the largest in Europe, where we invest in Series A startups and kind of help them grow. And I was very much an in-house kind of product consultant. So helping with all the challenges of how do you scale a product org? How do you do the org design? And inevitably a lot of strategy conversations, because I realized through that work especially that every product problem really is a strategy problem. There's so many times when you get pulled in, or I got pulled in for like, oh, we're not shipping fast enough, or, our team isn't working hard enough, or like all of these kind of questions that like a founder or CEO might have come in with and brought me in to help answer really came down to, well, it's because you're trying to do too many things, right? You don't have a clear strategy. You don't have a clear set of decisions that help your team actually execute quickly. And so you're trying to do too many things. You're trying to do everything, and therefore everything's kind of being done badly. And so let's have that conversation. Let's talk about strategy. Let's focus that in. And so that mental model is really there to help remind us that, especially as companies grow, we have to be mindful of all those decisions that we make. And so from the top down, it starts with vision and setting out where we want to go and kind of why we're here, the kind of mission, something really motivating for everyone on the team of, what we're doing and why it's important. Then it talks about strategy. So, this is very much 101 business school, but we tend to forget the importance of good strategy. We tend to forget how important it is to really make hard focused decisions. And so there's a lot of great strategy tools out there. There's a lot of good definitions out there, but organizations either don't do it or they don't communicate it well enough, right? So even if you have the most amazing strategy in the world, if your team doesn't know what that is or doesn't remember that every day, then, it's not really helping you. And then the next level down is objectives. So I like using OKRs, but you don't have to. It can be NCTs. It can be anything else that kind of helps translate strategy into act. And then the final piece is kind of principles at the bottom, which is really about how you want to do that work. And not just ways of working, so not just values, but really thinking about some of the trade-offs that you're willing to make. So my favorite examples there are Monster, the job board, two-sided marketplace, had a very clear principle that we did everything for the job seeker first, because by building the best experience for the job seekers, then recruiters have to follow. Or on the flip side, you can look at Shopify, right? They say the opposite. So they say merchants come first, because they believe by building the best possible experience for merchants, they get interesting shops, which then gets lots of customers. And so having those very clear principles that are actually a reflection of your strategy helps everyone execute. And it's that kind of stack of decisions that makes up the decision stack. And the beauty of it, I think, is from the top down, you're basically asking how, right? So, hey, we have this vision. How are we going to achieve that? Well, here's our strategy. Okay, well, how are we going to achieve that? Well, here's our objectives, and so on. But actually also from the bottom up. So if you're an individual product manager, designer, engineer, anyone in the team, you can ask, why is this thing I'm building important? Well, because it connects to these goals. Why is that important? Because it connects to this strategy, and so on, kind of up the stack. So it's really meant to be a mental model that helps not just leadership kind of enforce anything. It's not about control. It's about setting context, but also helps those individual team members really understand how their work connects to something important and to help make decisions, frankly, right? I think, again, I'm a huge believer in empowered teams, and we want our product teams to be out there making decisions, but all pulling in the same direction, ideally, right?
So, is decision stacked like a Jenga, where you have if one is removed, then everything
very much
collapses.
so. Yeah, I think one of the slides I have in my talk that gets the most laughs is when I have a poor little kid that's playing with a block of Jengas, and he pulls out the wrong piece, and obviously all falls on top of him right in his face. And I think that's what happens in a lot of our organizations, right? We forget that, oh wait, our strategy. And again, they might have a strategy, but it might not be clear enough, and that's the same thing as taking that block out and the whole thing kind of falling on your face. So I think that's why I'm talking so much about it, is that importance of being not just developing these things, so having a clear strategy, having clear objectives, and doing it the right way, but just communicating it, right? Making sure that the team actually knows what it is, understands it, is hopefully part of actually developing a lot of it. Because I think, again, the best way to do it is to co-create this together with our teams. But that clarity really helps as well.
Wow. So it's important to have individual product managers that are empowered.
100%.
A lot of that grooming comes from product leaders. In a fast-paced environment, and when we are seeing so frequent releases from, ChatGPT and others, how do product leaders maintain a balance between that long-term vision and short-term execution pressures? How does their decision stack, in fact, helps in doing this?
I think empowered teams and the stack kind of really help with that, right? I think it really allows leadership to be less focused in the detail and spending so much time thinking about how exactly should this feature look, or how should we solve this exact customer problem, and take that step back and zoom out and really trust their teams to build, because they're setting enough context and clarity through strategy that the team knows exactly what problem they need to solve. They know what metrics they need to go after, and can execute towards that. So I think it really actually frees up leadership to spend more time looking forward. And I think those decisions, having that stack of decisions, again, just gives context for the whole team, right? So you don't have to have that debate every single time. Are we doing this job seeker first or recruiter first? You already know that. So going into a new feature and moving fast, you don't have to do that debate again. You can just go, yep, we're doing job seeker first. Here's a problem we're solving. Let's go, right? So hopefully these decisions, again, they stack up. They kind of help you actually move faster and not get in the way. So you're not over-egging it. You're not repeating these things. You're not having that debate over and over again. And again, I think it's really empowering for individual teams to kind of execute towards, but also for leaders to actually know that, oh, this is my job. I can step back. I can focus on like, where are we trying to go? What is the customer problem? How are we going to win there? Where do we need to be in a year's time, 2 years time, 5 years time? Not what am I building right now? Because I can trust my team to make the right decision there.
That's exciting to know. And so Martin, this year, there's been this lot of talk about a new type of a role called the AI product manager. And with this rise of all these AI tools, I believe product manager role is going to change. However, the AI product manager might not come, or do we need to be like B2B product managers or B2C product managers, or will there be an AI product managers? Or do you see that the role of product manager would fundamentally change from the time you wrote the book?
I think it's definitely a continuation of that evolution, right? So I agree with you. I'm not 100% convinced we need a specialization AI product manager. But then I would also argue you don't need a specialization of B2B or B2C product manager. It's the same job, right? We're still solving customer problems. The complexity and the different stakeholders change based on the market. But I think, as we were talking about just now around the evolution that I've seen, right, from PRDs and kind of very waterfall process into much more agile and Scrum into, the iterative product operating model that we're in today, I think AI is just a natural continuation of that. Don't get me wrong. I think AI is massively impactful. Like, I think it's as big or bigger as the mobile or the web. Like, it is a massive step change in both what we build and how we build. And it's going to impact every product person out there and how we work and how to be more effective. And we're going to have to make some tough choices, because it's very easy to hand off a lot of the kind of, a lot of the generation stuff around writing documents or writing PRDs or writing requirements or synthesizing content that we get from user research. It's very easy to hand that off to AI and you get decent results back. But I think sometimes you actually miss the point of doing the work of synthesizing that information, right? Which is to learn and to understand what the customer really needs and do some of the kind of inductive leaps yourself. So I think there's a challenge there and a dichotomy that, yes, we should be using this tooling. Every product person out there should be learning how to better use the tools. We should be, building even more experiments and prototypes and everything that we can with the new generative tools. But we also have to be a little bit careful to hand off too much to them and lose a lot of the insight that we might gain along the way.
Like having a human in the middle.
I think we've talked about this for years, really, right? Even before the Gen AI craze, that LLMs, AI, like as much as we were doing anything AI related before that, it's always best with a human in the loop. Like, they can do amazing things, but we still need that human judgment. We still need that human insight, I believe, in order to make really amazing products. And I think we can't forget about that as we get excited about all these new tools, and have to really focus in on how do we use them in a way that still keeps us in the loop. And it's not a defensive thing. This is not about like protecting my job or anything, but I think about doing better work because we're still in the loop. So we just have to make the right choices about how we use it, I think.
Absolutely. I also think it's more about human AI collaboration or human any tech collaboration. As you said, this Gen AI have definitely caused some disruption into how the field is looked at. Are there any other emerging trends or technologies that you see that all product managers should be aware of and may significantly impact even how we work on everyday processes?
I think it's less about technology for me, but I think the other one, just coming back to that point, is really about strategy and business. I think we forget often in product that that is our role, right? If we go back to that Venn diagram, like we're the ones that are responsible for the business impact and value. And we have great partners in design and engineering who are responsible for the other sides. And not, again, that it should be that black and white and everyone comes, it's a team effort. But at the end of the day, like, we are responsible for making sure this has value, right? That this is delivering value to our customers and therefore to our business. And so I think we can't forget that at the end of the day, it is a business function. It is about driving results. It is about thinking, understanding how your business works, understanding business levers. And that's not to say everyone should go do an MBA. Like, I'm a college dropout, so I'm never one to kind of go chase that. But I also see some of the most effective leaders around me are the ones who've taken that step of learning a little bit more about that, making sure that they go have conversations with the CFO, making sure that they're understanding really how the business works, what's driving those results, what do the shareholders care. These are the kind of things that great product leaders really understand, as well as how do we build great products, how do we work with design and engineering and all the other parts. So for me, I think that's the biggest one that I frankly see a lot of people forgetting about or missing the point on. And I think AI is an amazing tool as well that's going to impact us, but I think it's just as important to make sure that we remember those fundamentals, right?
Do you see any fundamentally things changing? The way product management, even across industries, is different. There's no one definition of product management.
I think that's the beauty of it to some extent, right? I know it's a struggle sometimes for us in product that it's very hard to know what box you fit in sometimes and to present yourself, whether it's for a new job or, to tell your family what you do, because it is a bit widespread. But I actually think that's one of the strengths, that we have all these amazing differences and insights and experiences that we bring together. Just looking at, those of us on this recording, like, we all have different backgrounds and different educations and different kind of experiences that we bring to the table. And I think product as a craft is richer because of it, right? So I kind of think it's, as you said in the beginning, we've matured a little bit in our definition and we have a slightly clearer understanding of what product is. And I think that's maybe enough. Like, at this point, I think it's good to have a little bit of mess in there and a bit of, differences of opinions. And I think it's that kind of natural conflict that actually brings out better product or ways of working and a better craft for product. And so I think it's really about embracing that and embracing that diversity of opinions and insights and experience. And when you're building a team or thinking about a team, like, thinking about not just, the old culture culture fit that we used to talk about. But as my friends say, always reminds me to talk about culture add, right? What can I add to this culture that would actually bring a new perspective or a new insight to bear on what we're trying to work on? And whether that's a different educational background, a different socioeconomic background, just different experience, again, B2C, B2B, different industries. How can we bring something more academic or research-based to it? All of these different things, I think, as we build out teams, really enrich how we build products. So I think it's just something to embrace rather than challenge.
So do you also see that there's a need, or there are existing roles of product management in the venture space, because you are also advising a few? So why I'm asking this is, product management is mostly tech, and then we do not think about industries where you need product management or the roles exist.
Yeah, I think this is one of those fundamental things around products, right? And whenever anyone says that, oh, we don't have product managers or, anything like that, someone's still doing the job, right? If you don't have the title, someone's still doing that work. And it's tech companies that might be the engineers, it might be the founders, it might be someone else doing it. But then looking across other industries, someone's still doing that. So I've advised a few companies that are doing, much more sustainability or kind of hardware or like deep chemistry things I can't really help with because I don't have that background. But they might not have product managers because it's not a tech company and they're not shipping every 2 weeks kind of thing. But someone's doing that work. Someone's thinking about, how do I connect the dots between what our customers need, what our capabilities are, and what brings value to our customers and us as a business. And often that's the founder in an early stage venture company, but over time it might be chief operating officers, other roles that get involved, but someone's still doing that thinking. And I think that that's an opportunity for us as product leaders in tech or product leaders in the community to think about, how do we actually encourage that thinking, and how do we share everything that we've learned about what works and doesn't work in that conversation with people who are maybe starting out to do it. And I think that was one of the really interesting things with ProductTank for many, many years. We would always, almost every single meetup I remember here in London, we would have somebody come up to us afterwards and go like, well, so this is what I do, because my title's not product, but this is kind of my job, right? And that was mainly in tech. That's maybe how they found us. But, you had all sorts of titles around web manager and digital manager and all sorts of stuff. And then by finding us as a community, realizing that, oh, I'm a product manager. Oh my God, there's all this information out there. There are books out there. There's so much research and studies and a community and so many things I can learn from. So hopefully that's something I want to do over the next few years, but hopefully as a community that we see more and more of that sharing of knowledge with other industries, right? So how do we take some of these best practices and hard fought lessons to other industries and actually help with things like sustainability and reindustrialization, electrification, and all these big challenges that we have ahead of us?
So I had this, I recently read a report about this class of companies that are unicorns and have less than 50 employees, 11 labs, and so some of the similar ones, which is amazing and which blows my mind of how can this new age companies come in and with such less human employees and still command those sort of customers, those sort of mature products. Are we seeing some sort of an evolution where this could somewhere there means these are extreme, but there could be some sort of a norm where we do not see the growth with the number of people or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's amazing to see, Lovable is a company here in Europe that's been doing amazing work with a very small team. They were probably on that list. And it's amazing to see. I think it's testament to show just how much value you can still deliver by leveraging new technology, by really thinking about a customer problem and how to deliver on that simply. In this case, using Gen AI, as we talked about, but I think it's not just about that. And then I think it's, I think we don't know yet exactly how some of this stuff is going to shake out. I do think a company like Lovable or 11 Labs, they are going to have to grow more. Maybe they probably won't be as big as, some of the last generation of big companies. Mainly, I think around things like support and, the size of engineering orgs. I think we've learned as well that just adding more people doesn't always get us to actually do more stuff, because the overhead, again, the decision stack above you of like all the decisions you have to make and all the coordination you have to do and all the dependency management and all that kind of stuff gets in the way. So I think there's a rebalancing there and a rethinking of, again, how do we leverage these tools to do better work and deliver more value? But I think personally, there's still sort of exceptions to the rule. I think they're amazing stories because they are so, they've built amazing companies and products with very small teams. But I don't think that means every company in the world is going to be that over time. I think there's going to be a mix, just like with everything else. There's going to be some leading, some lagging, but also some organizations where you can leverage Gen AI and you can do all this tooling and kind of not need as many people to run the organization, but somewhere you might still need lots of humans involved. So I don't think we know the answer yet, really. And
I know that we are still exploring, but just a follow-up question to that. How does one become a product manager? What are the skills to get a job? Probably Lovable, probably 11 Labs, or those, cutting-edge companies like that.
Yeah, my sense is, looking at some of the people who have joined those companies recently and founded those companies, it's really generalists, right? I think that's a big, talking about skills actually for the future. I think it's embracing that product management mindset of a generalist mindset of not just, how do we look at our team and lots of different skill sets, but I think what makes great product people in general and looking at these organizations specifically is people who are, yes, they understand product, but they also understand design. They also understand technology. They've been playing around with these Gen AI tools since the day they came out. They are very much involved in all of it, and therefore can do more as individuals than maybe even a whole team can. And so I think that's one of those like level up things as well that you see. But it's also a flip side, right? I think it's one of the challenges going forward is how do we think about developing the craft, not just a product, but engineering and design. If suddenly, you're going from teams of 10 to teams of 2 or 3 people, what happens to the juniors? How do we train up that next generation of product managers, engineers, designers? So I think there's going to be a pendulum swing back, partly because we need to think about, and not all the way, I don't think we're going to go from, multi-100,000 people organizations to 50 people back to 100,000, but like it might swing back to a bigger org than 50 at least, partly to think about all the things that come with growing organizations, right? How do we think about redundancy? How do we think about, someone needs to take vacation every once in a while. We need a backup for that. And then if someone's taking vacation, it can't just be a junior. So we need to think about how do we build a team that can support each other and learn over time. And eventually, inevitably, someone's going to leave the company because they want to do something different or take a slower pace. And we need to have someone in place to back that up. So I think we'll see a little bit of this kind of maturing out where the teams will grow a little bit in size again. Because you want to develop that. But I think also just as humans, we need to be mindful that we need to think about how we're training up our replacements, really. How we're thinking about training up the next generation of products, engineering and design, and not just assume that we can get by with a minimal team forever, right?
Yeah. And do communities have a role in that role? Communities like ProductTank mind the product and with such teams and with new age product managers, team sizes of 2.
I hope
so.
Where
does community lie in that?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think community is an incredibly important part of how we develop a craft and how you develop your individual skills, but it's not the only one, right? And I think especially in product, it's one of those where, as Mind the Product, we always shied away from having certifications, for example, because we didn't believe that just by doing a course in product, you are now a certified product manager. You have to go do the work, right? You have to actually be doing the work in an organization to become a good product manager. And I think that's true for engineering and design as well. You can learn a lot in school or through a community or through the books, self-taught. Back in the day, I was very much a self-taught designer and coder. But to become really excellent at your job and to be, take that next level and to get into leadership, etc., you have to do the work. So I think communities can be a huge part of that, and sharing lessons learned and what works and what doesn't, and how do we build at scale when we're small teams and all those conversations. But ultimately, we still need those jobs, right? Because we still need people doing the work in order to really learn it.
So, Martin, communities like ProductTank have been a major part of my career too. When I joined, I was a researcher that transitioned into product manager, and then to find people of my, who can understand me, I think ProductTank helped a great deal. How do you now envision the evolution of product communities itself in the next 5 to 10 years? Independent companies would have maybe smaller teams, but then how would communities' role itself would be evolving?
Yeah, I hope it evolves much as it has, right? I think it's about local communities, local, teams and people sharing with each other what they've learned, what's not working. I always felt the best ProductTank talks were the ones where someone could be really honest because it's a small local meetup, get up on stage and go, this is what we tried. We went horribly wrong. We ran headfirst into a brick wall, failed miserably. And this is what we learned from that, right? And I think those kind of really hard fought lessons, and you can do that in a meetup environment because it's small, it's local, it's not being recorded and broadcast over the internet, so you don't feel like, you're hanging yourself out too much. So I think that should continue, right? I hope that continues as we see ProductTank and other communities grow, that real honest learning happens at the community level. And I think that's even more important as we're trying to figure out some of these big challenges around, what does our job look like with AI in place or replacing us or not replacing us? What does it look like with a smaller team? How do we actually balance that? How do we work with our stakeholders to say that, look, yes, we can get a lot of stuff done with a small team, but we actually need to be a little bigger to have redundancy, and I might need to take a vacation and have those kind of conversations. And so I hope the community can continue to be supportive of that. But I also hope that the community can be something that encourages people to think even bigger, right? Like, how do we take some of these product insights and the things that we've learned as a craft to other industries, right? Maybe that's something that the product community can take a lead on and really encourage. We have huge societal, political, economical, and industrial problems in front of us, right? Whether it's climate change or other challenges. And so how do we maybe bring some of the things that we've learned to those spheres? And maybe that's something the product community can shift on and learn from, right?
It's been about 15 years since ProductTank started, and it's your legacy. It's been it's grown into a global movement now. And how do you see what kind of legacy do you see in the next 15 years? Is it the green plaque on that pub that says that Martin, Eriksson, and Venn started ProductTank here? Or something like that.
First of all, that's so strange to me, right? I think, again, I just started it as a way to meet other product people, and that's all I ever wanted. Those first 25 people, that's all I wanted. That's all I needed. And I was very proud and very happy to support the growth of it. But also have to recognize it wasn't all about me, right? Yes, I started it. But we had an amazing team. Like Simon and Jana helped out so much. We had then Mark Abraham, especially, I think, really helped us grow it internationally. We had, people who came to ProductTank in London basically moved back home. So we had Iris who moved to Amsterdam and Graham who moved to Manchester. We're like, wait, there's nothing here for us. Can we take ProductTank with us? And that was the start of kind of that growth as well into other cities and other countries. And then from there, all the local organizers, all the local coordinators, like, you're the guys who are doing all the hard work, right? We hopefully set some stuff in place and helped with a brand and helped with some, again, lessons learned, what works, what doesn't work, how to think about this. But the success of ProductTank is down to all the hundreds and hundreds of organizers who created these meetups. So I really, I'm super proud of what it is and what it's become, but I can't take the credit for all of that. So maybe one day we'll have a blue plaque, one of those historic plaques that you get here in London around in this building, something happened. But again, I think product's one of those like slightly niche roles still. So I don't know if we'll ever be famous enough to earn one of those. But I think it's really about the fascinating thing for me and the exciting thing for me is to see the people who are coming out of ProductTank, right? So you think about those early attendees. I just did a post for World Product Day because it was the 15th anniversary. And I kind of look back at like, who are the people who are actually just attendees even at that first ProductTank? And you look through all of them. And I remember most of the faces and names now and looking through it. But you realize that 15 years later, right, they've all gone from being product managers to being VPs, CPOs, some are CEOs, some are VCs. And so I think that's the true legacy of ProductTank in these communities going forward is the success that's brought to everyone who's taken part in it, who's shared their stories, who's come along with the community, who's learned something from it. And hopefully seeing all of them go on and do bigger and better things and have an impact on not just our craft again, but our whole industry, right? So that would be the true amazing legacy for me.
So Martin, people who are all listening to us, how would they reach out to you or learn more about the work? What platforms do you?
So that's a funny one, right? I think one of the biggest things I miss is good old Twitter, right? I'm not on it anymore. I refuse to call it by its new name. We've lost some of those communities that we had online to connect with each other. So the easiest is probably LinkedIn. I'm just Martin Eriksson at LinkedIn. You can usually find me pretty easily. You can find my website, martineriksson.com, if you want to engage me for anything. And then I'm doing most of my writing now in public. And so I'd love feedback on the decision stack and everything that around it. Just go to thedecisionstack.com and you can find everything there.
And we will include that in our YouTube write-up that we do.
Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today. And it's an absolute pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sharing your wisdom, your story, and
anytime. Thank you so much.
And for the listeners, stay curious, stay connected. And if you have any feedback, please put them in the comment section or reach out to us on LinkedIn.